The secret died with him, or at least that's what Robert Redford thought. For decades he carried it, buried deep beneath the golden smile, the piercing blue eyes, the effortless charisma that made him one of Hollywood's most beloved icons. He never spoke of it, never let the mask slip. But when his wife finally revealed what he'd been hiding all those years, the truth didn't just shock the world, it shattered the legend. And in a strange, painful way, it killed him all over again. Not physically, but in the way that matters most. By exposing the man behind the myth, the grief behind the glamour, the unbearable weight he carried alone until the very end. Robert Redford was born Charles Robert Redford Jr. on August 18, 1936, in Santa Monica, California, into a world still reeling from the Great Depression. His father was a milkman turned accountant. His mother encouraged his creativity, nurturing the imagination that would one day captivate millions. But young Robert was restless, rebellious, uncertain of who he was or what he wanted. He attended the University of Colorado on a baseball scholarship, but struggled academically, drowning his confusion in heavy drinking until he lost the scholarship entirely. "I was lost," he later admitted. "I didn't know who I was supposed to be." So he ran. He traveled through Europe, living as a struggling artist in Paris and Florence, painting, wandering, searching for meaning in cobblestone streets and ancient architecture. It was there, in the shadow of history, that he began to understand the power of storytelling, of expression, of art as a way to make sense of a chaotic world. When he returned to the United States, he decided to pursue acting, not because it was easy, but because it felt like the only thing that made sense. He trained at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, where his natural charisma and thoughtful approach to performance quickly set him apart. His early career began on Broadway, where he starred in Barefoot in the Park in 1963, captivating audiences with his boyish charm and emotional depth. Hollywood soon came calling, and Redford transitioned to film with ease. His breakout role came in Inside Daisy Clover in 1965, but it was Butch Cassidy in The Sundance Kid in 1969, alongside Paul Newman, that made him a global superstar. The film cemented his image as the quintessential American anti-hero. Charming, flawed, impossibly magnetic, and it marked the beginning of one of the most iconic partnerships in cinema history. Throughout the 1970s, Redford's career soared. The Sting, The Way We Were, All the President's Men. Each film showcased his versatility and intelligence as an actor. He wasn't just a pretty face. He was a thinker, a craftsman, someone who cared deeply about the stories he told. And when he stepped behind the camera to direct Ordinary People in 1980, winning 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, he proved he was more than just a movie star. He was a visionary. But behind the accolades and the adoration, Robert Redford was a man drowning in grief. The tragedy that defined his life came early. His firstborn child, Scott, died from sudden infant death syndrome at just 2.5 months old. It was 1959. Redford was only 23 years old, still trying to figure out who he was, and suddenly he was bearing his son. "You never get over something like that," he admitted decades later, his voice breaking. "You just learn to live with it, but it changes you forever." That loss, that unbearable, incomprehensible loss, shaped everything that came after. Behind every smile he gave on camera, there lingered a grief that never truly faded. Behind every triumph, every award, every standing ovation, there was a father who couldn't save his son. "I wanted to be someone who mattered," he once said, reflecting on his youth. But no matter how much he achieved, no matter how many lives he touched through his films, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had failed in the one role that mattered most. Fame, when it came, only made things worse. The success he had worked so hard to achieve came with an unbearable loneliness. "Fame is a mask that can suffocate you," he once confessed. "You start losing sight of who you really are." The perfectionist in him demanded control, but life repeatedly reminded him how little control he truly had. And the more famous he became, the more isolated he felt. His marriage to Lola Van Wagenen, which began in 1958 when they were both young and hopeful, slowly unraveled under the weight of tragedy and distance. They had 4 children together, Shauna, David, and Amy. but the loss of Scott cast a long shadow over their lives. Redford was often away on location, immersed in demanding roles, while Lola managed the family and pursued her own career as a historian and activist. We grew in different directions, Redford reflected quietly in later interviews. Sometimes love isn't enough to keep two people together. Their divorce in 1985, after nearly 3 decades of marriage, was painful but necessary. Both needed to find their own paths forward. For many years, Redford remained single, throwing himself into his work with the Sundance Institute, environmental causes, and independent filmmaking. He poured his energy into nurturing young artists, giving voices to stories that Hollywood ignored. Sundance became his sanctuary, his way of making meaning out of the chaos. But even that couldn't fill the void. Then he met Sibylle Szaggars, a German-born multimedia artist whose spiritual and creative sensibilities resonated deeply with his own. Their bond developed gradually, rooted not in the fiery passion of youth, but in mutual respect, shared creativity, and a profound understanding of life's impermanence and beauty. In 2009, after more than a decade together, they were married in a private ceremony in Hamburg, Germany. It was intimate, quiet, attended only by close family and friends. For a time, it seemed that Redford had finally found peace. But even in the quiet moments of his later years, the ghosts of his past never truly left him. His wife eventually revealed what few people knew, that Redford had long battled deep emotional turmoil and bouts of depression stemming from his personal losses and the pressures of public life. He carried a sadness that no one could see, she shared tearfully. He hid it behind his strength, behind his art, behind his silence. Friends who knew Redford privately described him as a man of immense depth, a perfectionist who demanded the same dedication from himself that he gave to his craft. Yet that same perfectionism often made him his own harshest critic. "I always felt like I wasn't enough," he reportedly told a confidant in his later years. The tension between his private pain and public persona became a quiet battle that took a toll on both his health and his spirit. He suffered from insomnia, anxiety, and a profound sense of guilt. Guilt over Scott's death, guilt over his failed marriage, guilt over the time he couldn't give to his children because he was chasing a dream that never quite satisfied him. "Pain teaches you what joy really is," Redford once said. "You can't understand one without the other." His words now echo as both a confession and a lesson, a reminder that even the brightest stars carry shadows that the world may never fully see. When Redford's wife revealed these truths after his passing on September the 16th, 2025, it shocked fans who had always seen him as a model of poise and control. The revelation that one of Hollywood's most admired figures had suffered so profoundly in silence added a heartbreaking layer to his legacy. His story became not only that of an artist, but of a man burdened by sorrow, guilt, and the weight of unspoken pain. Robert Redford passed away peacefully in his sleep at his home in Sundance, Utah, at the age of 89. He was surrounded by loved ones, resting comfortably in the mountain retreat that had long been his sanctuary, the very place that bore his creative legacy. News of his death drew tributes from all corners of the world. Actors who had worked with him described him as gracious, disciplined, and wise beyond measure. Directors credited him with reshaping American cinema. Environmentalists hailed him as a pioneer who used his fame to advocate for the planet long before it became fashionable. But perhaps the most powerful tribute came from his wife, who spoke not of his achievements, but of his humanity. "Robert taught me that strength isn't about never breaking," she said. "It's about continuing to show up, even when you're broken." He showed up every single day, even when it hurt. And that's the real legacy he leaves behind. The secret that Robert Redford carried, the grief, the guilt, the unbearable weight of loss, didn't destroy his legacy. It deepened it. It revealed that the man we admired wasn't a flawless icon, but a human being who struggled, who hurt, who carried wounds that never fully healed. And in that revelation, there's a strange kind of comfort, because it reminds us that even the most extraordinary people are, at their core, just like us, fragile, imperfect, trying their best to make sense of a world that doesn't always make sense. Robert Redford died painfully, not from illness or injury, but from the slow, silent accumulation of a lifetime's worth of sorrow. And when his wife revealed his secret, she didn't betray him. She honored him. She gave the world permission to see him not just as a legend, but as a man who loved deeply, who suffered quietly, and who, despite everything, never stopped trying to create something beautiful out of his pain. And maybe that's the most powerful legacy of all.